I'll be happy, Madam Chairman, to call the roll in the absence of our Executive Director, if that's the pleasure of the board. Board member, Mr. Doucette. Here. Eli Roberts. Christy Duran. Here. Langston Adams. Here. Richard Wyckoff. Present. Warren Pena. Here. Pat Holmes. Here. Ingrid Holmes. Here. Carol Womack. Here. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Holy and gracious God, are you in this seeking your will, all our deeds and our actions, seeking your blessings that we may make wise and good decisions for every citizen of this city. We ask for intelligent and respectful discussion tonight, and that all voices would be heard, that we may discuss in honesty and openness and make those decisions that are indeed best for all. We thank you, Lord, for your provision of the guidance through this process. Be with us tonight as we meet. And a special blessing, please, on Mr. Batiste as he continues to recuperate from all these things. We ask in your most holy and gracious name with thanksgiving. Amen.
Amen. Of the United States of America, Republic, nation, God, peaceful.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes from the last meeting? Make a motion that be approved as presented. A motion?
Second it.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Petitions and communications, number 1, petitions, Iceland Farms.
Madam Chairman, we had tonight Dr. Haney Toomey of Golden Triangle Consulting Engineers, one of the representatives for Ricelands on a proposed project in an area that would be added to the EDC Business Park. Also with Dr. Toomey, Mr. Sean David, and if y'all want to come up to the podium, they were just at the presentation point for y'all to make the presentation. We just recognized Dr. Toomey.
Members, honored to having you.
There you go.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. We're bringing to you a project that is unique in nature, that has been on the books of Riceland Farms for over a year now, with the intention to have it built in a different county, in a different part of not the state, but this area. And when I was involved in this project about 3 months ago, and I started looking at all the logistics related to the project being in a different county, I thought your facility will be ideal for this project. I didn't know much about the EDC at that time and what you all have going on, and the more I researched it, the more excited I became about having this project in this area. Whether it is Mr. Batiste, that the day I called, he's like, I'm bedridden, but come to my house if you don't mind, and has been so helpful since day one, to the information I gathered from your engineer, Arsino and Gates. We're very excited to have this project at your park, and I think it's a very we are very close to making it happen. Let me give you a brief description what that project is about. Some people have been calling it a slaughterhouse and names that actually don't belong to it. What the project is named, it's a meat processing facility, because our objective is to take an animal and not just slaughter it, but also process it all the way through to packaging by the time this project is completely built and is at its final phases. The system we are using is a state-of-the-art system. There's not one meat processing facility in the United States today that has the technology that this facility will have. Every component of the animal will be processed, will be used in one way or another, whether it is to end up on the shelf at Kroger's or end up in dog food somewhere in North Carolina. But the objective is to, or the facility will be able to process every component of the animal. Most importantly, the slaughtering is being performed in the most way. No hanging of the animals upside down. There is no trying to go for the jugular, and you can't. The animals will be in boxes that will be laid on their side, and the cut is very clean and very precise. And that is important to us because all the product we produce will be USDA approved. It will have USDA stamp on it. And the USDA has a binder of rules and regulations we have to follow that's about 5 inches thick. And one of the things we have to make sure is taking place properly is the humane slaughter of the animals. Other items that we have to abide by is the cleanliness of the facility, whether it is on the inside or whether it is on the outside. By cleanliness, I mean odor, solid waste, anything relates to these animals as they're being transferred from the trucks to the holding barns, to the slaughter facility, to the meat processing operation, has to be kept clean. And by clean, I mean spotless clean, because the USDA will have an inspector on site all day, every day, as long as slaughtering is taking place. If we have 2 lines of meat processing, we're going to have 2 USDA inspectors on site watching the operation. So a lot of factors come into play when this system is unique when it comes to the treatment side. We have met with the city of Port Arthur. They have the capacity for the water supply because we're going to use about 65,000 gallons per shift, and the shift is 8 hours. Once we expand, it's going to be a 2-shift operation. $65,000 to the city of Port Arthur translates to about 65 gallons, translates to about $10,000 a month in water and wastewater fees. And they have the capacity for both. They also have a pre-treatment program because a facility like a meat processing facility has to follow TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality Guidelines, and it has to be part of a pre-treatment program. The city of Port Arthur has a pre-treatment program already established because of the industries that they have, and we will fall right into their program and meet all their discharge limits. The most important part of this is the Javed family is not new to this area. They have built many projects, created many jobs, and their objective is always to hire locally. Give you a slight example. They just built a little shopping center on Memorial Boulevard that they brought 2 chains there, Pizza Hut and Subway. And one of the conditions was you have to hire locally. And if you hire locally, we'll give you 6 months free of rent. So you have a partner in the community already bringing another project that's going to bring more jobs. And these are not the kind of jobs that you bring someone in and tell them, okay, go do it. There's an hour of training. We're going to set up camp with Lamar University. We're going to have professionals train the employees that we hire. And we're going to teach them a skill. So it's not take a shovel and dig and that's what you're going to do the rest of your life. We're going to teach them a skill and they're going to grow in the organization with the organization. Because the initial start phase is going to be about 30 employees, and that's a very conservative number. Because Mr. Batiste told me, be conservative. By the time we develop the project completely, we're going to look at 150 employees. The real number is at least double that. But we're being conservative with our numbers. But these employees will come, we were going to get the list from Mr. Batiste of people available in Port Arthur, not in the area. We're going to keep interviewing until we find enough people that can fit the job descriptions and are willing to do the work. We definitely want our workers to be local because it's much easier for us to have people driving 10 minutes to work than 45 minutes to work. And once the 10 to 10 acres we're asking for initially is bought and the first phase is completed, and we're projecting that to happen within 6 months, we're going to start looking at phase 2. And that is why, if you look at the drawing we provided, it shows us trying to purchase land in the new section you're buying that the council is supposed to approve tonight, if I remember correctly. And what that does, it puts us in an area of the park away from everyone. At the same time, it has the capability for the next 30 acres we want to be purchasing in the...
If I could, Madam Chairman, I don't want to interrupt Dr. Timay, but if I could bring the map up and then interject a couple of questions based on their conversations with your executive director since your last board meeting. It probably will give you a little better idea of the area that is being discussed. And I'll let you all pass the map around. Markings are this. If you look at that map in the southwest corner of the proposed 141-acre tract that you all are looking to acquire from Mr. Condon, it has there is approximately, it's identified as a 50-acre with 43 usable acres south of the pipeline corridor that runs basically catty corner across the tract, and this would be a proposal to site this possible facility in the southern portion of that, and perhaps that's why Mr. Timay is mentioning a 10-acre tract and approximately another 30-acre tract to option out, which would be the area, in other words, completely below the pipeline corridor. Obviously, I'm old enough, and Mr. Hayes is old enough to remember a guy named Billy Saul Estes who sold things that didn't belong to him. We're trying not to do that, so this is just on tonight for a presentation, and then later an item, if you will choose to do so, to allow us to proceed with the expectation that we're moving forward on a timetable to purchase this property. But some of the outstanding issues from the EDC's point of view is we have not set a per acre price as you have for the property in the business park, which Mr. Batiste is working on. We would obviously, if it's the pleasure of the board, have to work up a possible option and purchase agreement, the siting of the wastewater pretreatment facility, a little bit of issues working with the principals in Riceland and Dr. Timay on the road improvements. We would probably be looking at improvements much like those in the business park to carry fairly heavy commercial traffic with large volumes to meet their demands for getting product in and therefore product out. Part of this is in two different flood zones. One I'm very comfortable, no issues. The other one I'm also fairly comfortable is not any significant issues for their development plans, but those are matters that we need to have your engineers look at with Dr. Timay. And lastly, there is some utility access on the front, but that was for the lighting. I believe there's some fairly larger energy power on the side by Drainage District 7's facilities, and obviously there would have to be utilities run to the site. Those have historically been costs you all have incurred. Not sure that you're in a position to do that necessarily because of the timetable they're operating under, so we may have to enter into some sort of agreement, and they will be obviously coming back, as it's mentioned in the materials, seeking perhaps some incentive for job creation. But so there's several pieces of the puzzle to put together. The location of the site was, I think, well thought out by your executive director, if you are able to finish the purchase of that property, because to the south, I guess I call that the south, maybe it's the southeast and around, is pretty much ringed by that area that is not developable or is owned off your site by Drainage District 7. So you're putting it in a location where they would be able to manage a lot of truck traffic that would not interfere with the more traditional development that's gone on in the business park. So I know they looked at several sites in the business park and otherwise, and this was thought to be perhaps, again, that's entirely up to this board's decision, the best location if you close on it. So those are just the notes I had from my conversation with Mr. Baptiste on their conversation when he was able to visit with the principals in Riceland.
As far as utilities are concerned, you got a 16-inch water line that is on Jade Road that can service that project. They will have to extend a sewer line about 2,500 feet, but what that will do is bring sewer service to the entire property that you are purchasing, and there will be a road extension and a power extension that Arsenal, Wilson, and Cole, not Gates anymore, are now looking at the cost. And we're hoping what we're going to be purchasing the land for will be able to cover these costs, but at the same time, it's going to open up the rest of the property that you're in the process of purchasing soon. This is not going to be a project killer for us. If council decides not to purchase the property and the EDC decides they don't want it, they're going to back off. There are other sites in the existing park that we are still interested in, and we looked at and we did some floor plans to see if our structures will.
I wanted to ask either or you guys know whether or not the city of Port Arthur has ever considered before bringing up a business house, because I understand that Dr. Tomei found it as processing. However, as a part of the meat processing facility, slaughtering will be done, and I take it that's going to be cows and what other animals? Cows, sheep, and goats. So my question to you, do you know, since you've been our attorney for several years, whether or not the city has ever considered this before and what has happened?
I can't say directly on any meat processing facilities. Mr. Baptiste did check with the city and its planning department and code enforcement, and the zoning that is currently on this tract of land under the industrial type zoning would accommodate this. Now, whether it needs any specific permitting from the city, I have not made those inquiries, because that's really what, again, this is a presentation tonight, and the action item is to allow us to proceed. So we try not to expend too much of the EDC's funds until you all say this is something we're looking into, but that's exactly the type of inquiry that we would proceed with, along with the other questions that I outlined.
Too, so you don't know right now the answer to my question, which would be whether or not this type of facility has been considered in Port Arthur, but you would look into that. You don't know the answer.
This industry, just like everyone you all have, will have an NAICS code. Obviously, we have to make sure, and I'm fairly comfortable it will fall within a classification for which, as I said, I'm not giving any surprises. They've already indicated they want to come back for a possible job incentive, and so we would be looking at that vis-a-vis the NAICS code. That would let us back into the questions with the city on exactly whether that was permitted, or required a specific permit.
But I understand that. And then my next question, with something else you look into, to my understanding, the original intent of the business park was manufacturing and distribution. My question would be, would a slaughterhouse / meat processing facility be compatible with the original intent?
Well, we also have to remember, we also have processing, we're processing water through MPW, and we're providing the services through like Tyco Real Fire. So we have a broad array of services. I'm not aware of anything in 501 or 504 of the code that would prohibit this kind of processing plant. Processing plants of any number of commodities are done in EDC parks.
And my third question is, would you check with our existing businesses at our business park to get any feedback from them as to whether or not they would object to having a slaughtering house in close proximity to them? Because even if we look at the option 2 and 1, just looking at your map, that is still in relatively close proximity to the other businesses there. As of right now, I assume that that hasn't been done and no one has contacted any of those businesses.
Correct, until you cited a facility, but truck traffic and noise and odor are the questions that Mr. Baptiste has broached with Ricelands that they said they're perfectly happy to address. So it's the processing as we proceed with determining what site. And again, I wanted to say the remoteness, but because they had indicated a desire to option some additional property, Mr. Baptiste thought this might be more appropriate because, they anticipate that the price might be somewhat lower than the price of the business park. So obviously they're trying to get their cost of doing business down. And obviously if we're in the business park tying up property, we're going to require more than if we are in a park where we have not had to bear some of the infrastructure costs, and the per acre price, at least now, not necessarily in the future, might be a little lower. So it just looked like the best place for a possible connection between the two, the EDC and this prospective property purchaser.
I had a question for Dr. Tomei. When I looked into your business, and I think you guys are Riceland, is that right?
Riceland Farm.
I understand that you also have a meat processing facility in Winnie, is that correct?
That's the one we're relocating. There will be no processing facility in Winnie.
Okay, and I understand that in Winnie, there was opposition to your facility in Winnie, and at least the articles that I read from the hometown press, much of that opposition centered around the smell of the facility. And I also read in another article from one of the local papers there that you guys use what's called the halal method of slaughter. And in one of those articles from the Winnie facility, you required that you have Muslim employees be there who could do this particular method of slaughter, and that caused a degree of controversy by the requirement that these employees had to be Muslim. Would those same requirements be here at our plant?
Let me answer your question as politically correct as I can be. The facility is a halal meat facility, which means people slaughtering have to be Muslims, which means we will have 3 employees on the side that will be Muslims to actually slaughter the animals. The processing part will be done by other employees, no matter what their religion is. The issue with the smell and the concerns they had in Anahuac and Winnie are as political and as discriminating as they can be. For example, this facility was going to be installed on 500 acres in an area that has no homes, no businesses, but nothing but farmland. Who is complaining about the smell that is mainly generated from animals on the properties around us, which is what that property is actually used for? And when we saw the type of discrimination, and I'm going to call it what it is, towards a business that's bringing jobs to an area in the hundreds, we chose to move it to a place where people know us, people respect all cultures, and people that want to bring people to bring jobs. And that's why this project was moved to the EDC. What you're reading in the press is pure press. which is not acceptable, and I pray to God we're not going to see that in Port Arthur. And I know we're not going to see that in the EDC or the city itself.
The reason I ask that question is that just from what you said as a distinguishing factor, in Winnie, as I understand, business, there was no homes, but people complained about the smell. But at least in the article that I read from the hometown press, I understand that are recommended not per se have be a farming facility for these animals, but however, would it be in a meat processing facility? One of the complaints is that the odor from that you would have, and I read, it was pointed out that the amount of product to go as projected, the number of animals would remain high, which in turn would have the odor of a feedlot. My question would be, since we do have businesses there, and since there was a problem with odor in Winnie, but what you're saying is in Winnie, it was discrimination because there was no businesses and there was no homes. Well, that's not the case in Port Arthur. There are businesses. And I guess the question for me as a board member is, I'm 100% okay and support bringing jobs to Port Arthur. And whatever jobs you bring to Port Arthur, I'm all for it. While at the same time, if the odor was a problem in Winnie, would that problem from Winnie that you are recommending that we bring to Port Arthur, would that run away our existing clients? And I'm somewhat concerned because Guy's telling me, and Rachel is saying that as of right now, we have not contacted any of the existing businesses there. And since there are existing businesses there, and there was a problem of odor in Winnie, then that problem, if we put you here, then what are we going to say to those existing businesses? Do you see what I'm saying? And that's why I only raised that question, because I don't want to be in a situation where we vote on a particular project and while at the same time it causes discomfort to the neighbors that would be there.
Question really quick, Mr. Adams, and we'll go to other questions. The smell and the odor they were talking about in Winnie is imaginary. It's imaginary because we haven't built the facility yet, we haven't slaughtered any animals yet, and we haven't brought any animals to the site yet. So where is that odor they were talking about other than in their corrupt minds? Secondly, the facility here in Port Arthur at the EDC, there will be no animal raising, no animal housing on the facility. We have 3 companies we hired to do all the logistics that are going to truck in the animals every day. If we're going to slaughter and process 80 cows, we get only 80 cows for the day. They're going to get off the truck and they're going to go in a contained barn that has its own grit trap, that it's going to have an employee in charge of keeping it clean, because remember, cleanliness and the USDA is essential. And from there, the animal will be walked into the slaughterhouse few feet, which is all enclosed, where the slaughtering and the processing takes place. So, if there will be any odor, it is already there because the field behind you has animals being raised on it. But the odor will not come from our facility because we don't want to process a product in an unclean environment, and uncleanliness includes odor. The second thing, we're bringing in a capital investment of about $3.5 million. That's without the price of the land. And that's why we're trying to go in the backside of your new property to hopefully get a better deal, because we're already putting in a lot of money up front. Question in a political way? Maybe political, but
And I didn't raise the question from a political standpoint. I raised the question from an economic standpoint. And just from what I've read, in at least the local newspaper articles, I know that there were some issues regarding the method and that the requirement, because as far as I'm concerned, I want to see us hire people from Port Arthur, and I don't care what religion you are, just as long as you can do the work. But based upon what was going on in Winnie, at least from what I read, that this facility would require that some of the employees be Muslim due to the type of slaughtering that's done. There were some issues regarding waste coming from the animals, because obviously the animals are going to have waste, and would that get into the environment? Would that get into the water supply? There were some concerns as it related primarily to the odor. And for me, my questions are not discriminatory at all. My questions are purely economic, and the economics of this is, would this type of facility adversely affect in any way the facilities that are currently there? Now, I understand that your position is that they will not. I think the prudent manner as going forward is as far as to at least talk to the facilities that are out there to give them an opportunity to give us some type of feedback. I think that would be a very prudent course of action. And the only reason I raise those questions is because from what I've read in those, and I'm not winning, I'm just going by what I read in those newspaper articles, those were issues that was raised there where you're saying that you're going to relocate that facility and you would like to relocate it to our business park. And that's the economic reasons why I raised those questions.
Let me address your wastewater question real quick. There will be 3 Muslims on site to do the actual slaughtering. They will most likely relocate to Port Arthur and be living in Port Arthur. As far as the wastewater, we are capturing everything from these animals, even the blood. There are specific troughs that go to a specific tank, and we have bought a piece of equipment that will dry the blood to be able to sell it. So there is minimal waste. The hide is going to be sold. The hoofs are going to be grounded and sold. So every component of the animal is going to be sold. What is going to end up in the wastewater treatment system will be what we clean with. You're going to clean the facility after every shift. And this facility is going to be regulated by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality through the pre-treatment program of the City of Port Arthur. And their ordinance have very strict limits on what we can discharge to them. And the limits are strict enough. If we exceed them, we will be paying major fines. Their BOD limit is 500 milligrams per liter, for example. We cannot discharge to them more than 500 milligrams per liter. And they will be checking that. They will be testing that on a regular basis through their pre-treatment program. So we're going to be governed by the pre-treatment program of the City of Port Arthur, by the TCEQ, and by the USDA. So we can't even breathe wrong and not get fined and shut down. Yes, sir.
I have a question. I'm trying to get permission to speak. For what I know about the project, and it's a new technology, and I think the technology is what is going to answer a lot of questions as it pertains to odor, the process, no different than what the refinery does in their process and their technology, cleaning up waste. As you know, we've been in petrochemical area. We have a lot of smell. And there's a process, technology that cleans that up. And, through experience, it could be a bad smell, but the process that's the new technology cleans that up. So what I heard about y'all project, like you just said, a lot of the limited waste will be happening, mostly probably resold. And I like the fact that it's a diversity business and being economic area, real heavy, depending on petrochemical, but we need to continue looking at other ways to fund tax dollars, sales tax dollars, putting people to work in different skills, but everybody don't work at refinery, but it offers another career for our area, based on the human capital we have here, based on the manpower we have here. So I like the fact that I know it's an intent. We have a lot more work to do, to find out a lot of these questions that the commissioner asked about the smell. And I think that will be done in the next process. So I'd like to make a motion, since it's an intent, to move forward so we can bring it back.
Second that. Yes, just for the benefit of the chair, that would be agenda item, non-consent agenda item number 1, if you wanted to move to that. There were a couple of communications, but that was the next item on the agenda, if it's the pleasure of the board.
This was a presentation on,
Excuse me.
so if you want to move to agenda item number 1.
You can.
So moving to agenda item number 1 to discuss a letter of Riceland President.
Make a motion, we move forward.
Second that.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We'll get with the representatives of Riceland, and as soon as we own something that we can possibly sell to them, we will be happy to move the process along, sir. But we will bring a report back to the board. Yes, certainly. Madam Chairman, you want to...
Good evening. I just wanted to introduce myself, who have not known me. My name is Sean Javed. I'm one of the principals with Riceland Farms. Also, I own Riceland Medical Center in Winnie, which owns Winnie Community Hospital. And all the people that have been writing about this Riceland, like Dr. Haney said, project didn't even take place in all the order and all that he answered. Same folks have been writing about medical centers saying, oh, we hire Muslims there. And as of today, we don't even have a single Muslim working for the hospital. That's all I wanted to say.
Be careful what you read. Be careful what you read.
So I like to make sure that we take notes of the questions that were asked, and when we come back to move forward on this, we need to answer those questions. I think if we brought literature or something to explain the process, especially the part with odor and the requirements for odor, so that each member of the board can clearly understand it's factual as opposed to what our people opinions and what somebody might assume. So that will help at the next time you come, if you have some information that can answer those questions with what we need.
Existing.
We'll have EDC staff that has that relationship, contact them as soon as, again, like I said, as soon as we have something to sell to them, and we will continue this process so we would know where the location would be.